We'll call the council meeting to order tonight, and tonight will be led in our invocation by Pastor Ron Traub from First Assembly of God Church here in Sioux Falls. After the invocation, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, so please rise for the invocation.
Father God, we are truly grateful. In fact, we're grateful for so many things at this season. Especially, we thank you for the gift of your Son, our Savior, the greatest gift the world has ever known. We thank you also, Lord, for the gift of servant leaders, such as those who sit around these tables tonight, who serve the city and are a blessing of God to all of us. We give you praise and thanks for that. We thank you for all of our city servants who serve us so well, making the city safe and a good place to live. We give you praise for these people. And we ask your blessing to be upon them. They may know your grace in their life, experience your blessing. For this meeting tonight, we ask you for wisdom and understanding for the complexity of the agenda that these people will make decisions on tonight, that you will give them wisdom. You said if we lack wisdom, we can ask you. So we ask that you would give them wisdom, that wise and good choices and decisions will be made tonight. They'll not only be seen as wise and good tonight, but tomorrow they'll be seen as such. And a week from now or a year from now, we'll be able to look back at these decisions and say, God helped us and God gave us wisdom. We have good decisions. We thank you for them. We thank you for the blessings of God upon this city. We ask that your hand would continue to bless us, that we would experience the joy of Christ at Christmas time in our lives, and not only now, but throughout the year. And for all of these things, we ask them in the name of Jesus, our Savior, your Son. We give you praise for the answer. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to take and we have some journalism students here from Augustana College here, and their instructor is Janet Blank Libra, so they're here tonight. And would you just please stand, the students, please, and the teacher. Thank you for coming down. We thank you for being here tonight to join us. Okay, is there any discussion or is a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved, Jameson.
Jameson moved. Is there a second?
Second, Litz.
Litz seconded.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would like to request that we remove item number 9 from the consent agenda and place it on the regular agenda.
Okay. You want to move item number 9?
Yes, please.
And put on the regular agenda? When we get the regular agenda, you'll tell me what to put it. Is there a motion to remove item number 9? Motion made. Is there a second, I should say?
I'll second that motion, Knudsen.
Knudsen seconded. Okay. Motion made and seconded to remove item 9. All in favor of that motion will vote yes. Those opposed will vote no.
Council members Benedict, Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knudsen,
Yes.
Litz,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
That motion has prevailed. Item 9 has been removed from consent agenda. We're back to the main motion as amended. Is there further discussion on the consent agenda? Not all in favor of the consent agenda as amended will vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Council members Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knudsen,
Yes.
Litz,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
All members present have voted. The consent agenda has been approved as amended. Now we're at the regular agenda. Is there a motion to approve the regular?
Move for approval.
Okay, motion made. Was that you, Brian?
Kevin.
Oh, Kevin. Excuse me. Kevin, is there a second?
Second, Litz.
Litz.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would move to move item number 25 before number 24.
The motion is to move item 25 above 24. That's a motion. Is there a
Second, Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh second. Brown made the motion. Kavanaugh seconded.
Mr. Mayor,
Okay.
I would move to move item 27 to the end of 32, after 31.
Okay, let's do this. It's everybody's, that's your motion. Is there a second for that?
Second, Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh second that motion too. So we've got two motions, and if it's okay with the council to vote on both of those at one time, is that okay to do that so we know where we're at? Okay, we've got two motions here that we have before us, and all in favor of the motion to all in favor of a motion to amend, a double barrel motion to amend, will vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Councilmembers Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh, Knutson,
Yes.
Litz,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
That motion has prevailed. Is there further motion? Kevin, do you know where you want to put 9? Right after public, you want to put it right on top of this, after 10? Just put it right there. That's a motion been made by Kavanaugh. Is there a second?
Second, Brown.
Brown seconds. All in favor of that motion to take item 9 off and put on the regular agenda above item 10, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Councilmembers Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Litz,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
All members present have voted that motion prevails. So now we're back to the regular agenda as amended. All in favor of approving the regular agenda as amended, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Councilmembers Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Litz,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
All members present voted. We have approved the regular agenda as amended. Now is the time that we set aside 5 minutes. So anyone that wishes to address the council for a period of 5 minutes on any topic interested in would approach the podium at this time, and we will take 5 minutes of testimony. Seeing no one come, okay, come on. Yeah, when we get to that, we'll take that and you'll be able to, you bet. Others, anyone that wants to address the council for a period of 5 minutes? Not. Yeah, that's right, Rich. That's the first reading, so we don't take public input on the first reading. So if you want to address the council for a period of 5 minutes on that now, that'd be the time to do it, because we don't take public testimony in first reading. That'd be the next week when we take second reading. Hey, there are all rules out here.
My name is Rich Lauer. I'm a resident of 2017 South Austin Drive in the city of Sioux Falls. I'm retired from the securities industry and past chairman of the South Dakota Investment Council. And based on the limited information available at this point in time, I have 3 comments regarding the ordinance concerning the issuance of bonds to finance the Lewis and Clark project. And let me preface this by saying that I'm retired from the securities industry and have no economic or business interest in the process. Simply I'm here to share with you some thoughts gleaned over the last 40 years. One, when you go to issue the bonds, the ordinance should be amended or stated in such a form that the bonds are to be sold at a competitive public sale. Do not negotiate the sale of the bonds. The evidence across the United States in the municipal bond market is almost without any contradiction that the sale of bonds at a competitive open sale gives the issuer the lowest possible interest rate and the best terms. It's the same reason that you ask for competitive bids when you build buildings or buy police cars or whatever. So the first point would be that the bonds should be issued at a competitive public sale. Secondly, the bonds should be issued without any credit enhancements or derivatives. It's important to understand that things like credit enhancement and derivatives are add-ons to bonds. Every time there's an add-on, there's an additional fee by the underwriter. And if you make your bond issue too complex, which is not necessary with all of the bacon and cheese and onions on the bond burger, as it were, the underwriter will come to you and say, well, gee, we have to negotiate it. It's complex. The City of Sioux Falls is an outstanding credit, and this does not need to be a complex issue. It should be plain vanilla. Simple statement as to the maturity schedule and the rate of interest derived from a public sale. And the bonds, frankly, should be structured so that the payment of principal will not be deferred. I read in the Argus Leader, which may or may not be the source of all information on this issue, that there's a proposal to defer the payment of interest for a period of time, payment of principal for a period of time. Frankly, the world looks at that and looks at it the same way it looks at someone that comes into the savings and loan to get a mortgage on their home, and they can only afford an interest-only mortgage for the first few years. It's a sign of financial weakness. I'm not conversant with the city budget, but frankly, if you can issue the bonds, you can make the principal payments. There is no reason to defer the payment of principal unless you have other areas in the city budget that are leaking and you're trying to shore up. So those are my 3 points. Issue the bonds at a competitive public sale. You'll serve the taxpayers in this room and in this city if you do that. Don't make it fancy. It doesn't need to be. Warren Buffett said that when you get involved in the derivatives business, it's like going to hell. Easy to get there, almost impossible to leave. And think back, and you can Google in the long-term capital management debacle. The smartest people on the planet got involved in the derivatives business back in 1998. Nobel laureates in economics. And the money was coming over the transom until the world caught up with them. And those smart people took a big bath and took a lot of people with them. We don't need to become an Orange County or a San Diego by fiddling around with our financing structure. Keep it simple, keep it clean, and the taxpayers will be well served. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate it. Others that wish to address council for a period of 5 minutes?
Question.
Rich, come on.
Rich, you indicated on your third principle that the deferment of the principal pay portion, I believe, is for 5 or 6 years, that would be frowned on in the investment community. Wouldn't our credit rating and our existing financial structure overcome that?
Well, right now we have short-term interest rates are a little bit higher than the 5 and 10-year rates. So why would you not want to pay the bonds off on the short end? That'd be the first question. Second question is, why would you not pay your debt down? There's nothing to be gained at my home, and I suspect at yours, by not paying off principal on debt. The idea is to be out of debt.
The idea of that is that the project won't be completed till that time, and that we would begin making principal portion at that time, and that the users of the water at that time would be paying for the water.
Well, that begs the question as to why you're issuing the bonds today. Why not issue them when the water starts flowing?
I defer that to Lewis Clark.
Any other questions?
Kermit?
Yeah, Rich, part of the proposal is to have it paid off in 30 years. What do you think about paying it off in 30 years or pay it off earlier in 20 years?
Well, Kermit, I'm probably like you a little bit in this regard. I'm sort of old-fashioned. I think you ought to be out of debt as soon as possible. Now, this is a huge project and of incredible importance to the community, and maybe the revenue flow isn't adequate to pay it off in sooner than 30 years, and I'm certainly not conversant about that. But I would want the bonds to have a provision that you could prepay them in case you got lucky and had extra revenue coming in. It's generally not the case in the world we live in, but it'd be nice. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Other questions? Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Others wish to address council on any topic, public input for 5 minutes. I see no one coming forward, so we will move into the regular agenda. So item number 9.
Various retail liquor, packaged liquor, and retail wine license renewals for the 2007 to be operated at various locations in the city of Sioux Falls. See attached Exhibit C.
All right, the item that was pulled off the consent agenda is Exhibit C, which is our last list of renewals for 2007. And the hearing date will need to be set for December 18. And I believe the reason this was pulled off is because we do have quite a few underage sales, either that have already been charged or that are in the process. We have 3 under the retail liquor, and we have 9 under the packaged liquor.
Thank you, Lori. I will make a motion at the appropriate time to set the hearing date for December 18th. But I just wanted to bring this to everyone's attention. We have 19 specific businesses on this list. 12 of them were caught in the liquor sting. I find that troubling, especially considering all of the notoriety that these things get. And I guess what I'm asking for is between now and December 18th, when we are asked to take action on these renewals, that we get some sense of what the administration would recommend to this council that we do. And I don't care if it's from the police department, the finance department, whoever wants to recommend what action we should take with regard to these applicants.
Other questions of Lori?
And I would move to set hearing date for December 18th.
Motion been made to set the hearing date for December 18th. There's a second.
I'll
Second,
second.
Jameson. Jameson second. Okay. There's a motion made and seconded to set the hearing date. All in favor of setting the hearing date for December 18th? Will vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh, Knutson,
Yes.
Litz,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
Alderman President voted that hearing date has been set for December 18th. Let's go with
Okay, I have items 10 through 17. Lori Bosman with the City Finance Office. Item 10 is a new 2007 retail wine license for Dino's Grill. This would be at 1904 South Sycamore, effective January 1 of 07. Item 11 is a new 2007 packaged liquor license for Stogie's Quick Pick, and this is at 136 South Phillips Avenue, also effective January 1. And it does say on the agenda pending final inspection per fire, and that fire inspection has been completed, and so we no longer need that stipulation. Item 12 is transferring a retail malt beverage license from Robert Winder at the Arrow Bar to Doug Quaker, Arrow Bar, and this is at 212 West 10th Street, including video lottery terminals. This would be effective December 23rd. Item 13 is transferring a 2006 retail liquor license at the Grain Bin Steakhouse and Lounge, 5013 North Cliff Avenue, and this would go to MJ Ventures, Inc., and includes Sunday sales and video lottery terminals. Item 14, transferring a 2007 retail wine license from Food and Fermentations at 212 South Phillips Avenue to their new location at 431 North Phillips Avenue on the main floor, and this would be effective January 1 of 07, and this would be pending final inspection per fire. Item 15 is transferring the 2007 packaged liquor license for the same business from Food and Fermentation at 212 South Phillips to their new location at 431 North Phillips Avenue. Item 16 is a special one-day liquor license for Washington Pavilion Management, Inc. to be operated at the Pavilion on December 16 for a corporate holiday party. And then item 17 are various retail liquor, packaged liquor, and retail wine license renewals for 07 to be operated at various locations in the city, and these are known as Exhibit B, and this is our biggest list. And I do have a few stipulations, and I'll just go through those. Under retail liquor, for Century Motels East, Inc. for the Ramada Inn and Convention Center, 1301 West Russell Street. This would be pending corrections per fire. For the Ramcota Companies, Inc. for Best Western Ramcota Inn, 2400 North Louise, also pending corrections per fire. For Waterfall Plaza, for the Waterfall Plaza at 6121 South Minnesota Avenue. This would be pending final inspections per fire, health, and building services, as this business is not open. And then also for the Sioux Falls Regional Airport Authority for their creative croissants at 2801 J.C. Lane, that would be pending final corrections per fire. And then also I have one, I believe just one on, or two on the retail wine list. One is for Great Plains Lodging for Homewood Suites at 3620 West Avera Drive. That would be pending corrections per fire. And then also for the Sioux Falls Canaries at 1001 Northwest Avenue, again pending corrections per fire. And those are all the items I have. I'd be happy to answer questions on 10 through 17.
Questions, Lori, on items 10 through 17?
I have a conflict with item 17, so if we could vote on 10 through 16, and I'll choose myself for 17.
Okay. Further questions? Is there a motion then to approve items 10 through 16?
I so move, Knutson.
Knutson moves, there a second?
Second, Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh seconds. Further discussions on item 10 through 16? Not. All in favor of the motion to approve items 10 through 16 will vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Council members Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Litz,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
All members present voted 7 yes, 1 excused. Item 10 through 16 has been approved.
I'll choose myself.
You noticed that Councilmember Costello will be excused from item number 17. Is there discussion or motion on item 17? Move to approve.
Second, Jameson.
Motion made, seconded to approve item 17. Further discussion? No further discussion. All in favor of that motion to approve item 17 will vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Council members Brown,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Litz,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
All members present voted 6 yes, 2 excused. Item 17 has been approved. Now we're at item 18.
Second reading, rezone and ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at East 41st Street and Powder House Road.
Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services. This property was recently annexed after approval by the City Council. It's located directly south of 41st Street and east of Highway 11. The property is approximately 154 acres in size. The applicant is proposing to develop this property into a combination of residential, office, and commercial land uses. The zoning that's being proposed tonight will divide this property up into approximately 21 acres of commercial zoning, just over 4 acres of office zoning, 23.3 acres of multifamily residential zoning, 17 acres of zoning for twin homes, and the balance of the property, which is about 88 acres, would be for single-family residential. This is in our identified growth area, and we can provide future utility and street improvements to this development. The Planning Commission has recommended approval of the rezoning.
Questions of Mike on item number 18? Others that wish to address the council on item 18? Not, is it council discussion or action?
Move to approve, Litz.
Let's move. Is there a second?
Second, Brown.
Brown seconds. Further discussion? I see no further discussion. All in favor of the motion to approve item 18 will vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Council members Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh, Knutson,
Yes.
Litz,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
All members present have voted 7 yes, 1 excused. Item 18 has been approved. Item 19.
Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, providing supplemental appropriations, general fund, parks and recreation, special project purchases.
Don Kearney with Parks and Recreation Department. This item is to request a supplemental appropriation for our Special Projects Fund. This fund is comprised largely of donations received from the community for things such as memorial trees, park benches, municipal band, etc. The supplemental appropriation would allow us to use donated funds for a guest composer fee for the Sesquicentennial Band concert and to provide office furniture for the new band office in the Orpheum Theater. The total for these two municipal band items is $3,656. The other one is for Veterans Memorial Park. We budgeted to expend $250,000 in donations this year, and donations have exceeded those projections. So this supplemental appropriation would also authorize an additional of $5,148 to be used on that project as well. With that, I'd be answering any questions you might have.
Questions of Don on item number 19? Others that wish to address council on item 19? Council discussion or action on 19?
Move for approval, Jamison.
Jameson moves, a second?
Second, Costello.
Costello, second. Further comments? I see no further comments. All in favor of the motion to approve item 19, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Litz,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
All members present have voted. Item 19 has been approved. 7 yes, 1 excused. Item 20.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by setting forth the procedures for issuance of on-sale dealer licenses in alcoholic beverages other than light wine and malt beverage retailers and dealers.
Mr. Mayor, I have a conflict on the season.
Okay, it'll be noted that Councilmember Costello will be excused. Who is addressing?
Mr. Mayor, I can address that.
Okay, go ahead.
The City of Sioux Falls has been out of liquor licenses for about 18 months. With the population increase that we've seen in Sioux Falls, we anticipate we'll get 5 additional liquor licenses in July. So it was the task of the fiscal committee to figure out how we issue those licenses. There are really 3 issues we're considering. One, how to issue those, and we came up with a plan that interested parties can pay $1,500 and submit a written request to be included on a list between February and April 30th of next year, and those names will then be drawn by lot to create the order of each appointment. That list will be a public list, so anyone will be able to see who is on that list, and subsequent to April 30th, all the applicants will be added to the list on a first-come, first-served basis. That fee is non-refundable, but it will be applied to the first year's annual renewal fee, and the reason for the fee is to encourage serious people to apply for those. Before, we've never required that fee up front, and then Lori has had to go through and call back people to make sure that they were serious about wanting that liquor license. The second issue that we considered was the cost. Currently, this ordinance reads that the license will be $155,000, which is the current rate right now. The old formula was $1.25 per person. This would be roughly $1 per person. There wasn't unanimity on the committee about whether that was the right fee or not, but that's what it's set at right now. And then the third issue is putting the process of the purchase liquor license in order in a form through, we'll have to go through the planning commission to do this, to make sure that when you apply for a liquor license that you also have a conditional use for a location to put that license into operation. And that, like I said, that will have to go through the planning commission before this council handles that portion of the issuance.
Questions of Vernon on item 20?
Will there be a provision when they pay the $1,500 that they have to identify the location, or does that come later in the process?
Lori, help me with that. Isn't that going to come later in the process?
Yes, it will. What we'll do with that is when they actually make application and pay the fee, there'll be just a one-page application form, and they will need to identify the location of the proposed business.
On that application?
Yes, they will put it on the application, but they can change it up until the time they've been notified they will be receiving a license. Okay?
Further questions?
Yeah, on the $1,500 that has to be put up front, let's suppose somebody gets on the list and it decides, well, I guess I really don't want this. Will that be refunded to them?
No.
No, it's a non-refundable fee.
Is there any reason why we wouldn't want to give it back to them?
I can address that.
Yeah.
The committee, the fiscal committee talked about that, and Lori has managed some awfully long lists, sometimes with people that were not truly interested, and sometimes because of the black market price of liquor licenses in the city. So in order to, it's in the city's best interest to get these issued and used, so they're generating money for the city. So serious users are to apply. people that are intent on using the licenses.
But putting up 1,500, and then you wait around for months or years, and, you know, conditions can change. It would seem to me that we should be able to give it back to them.
There's a feeling in the committee that it's a non-refundable. If anyone else from the committee wants to address that.
Further questions? Seeing no further questions, let's move on to 21.
First reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, providing supplemental appropriations, general/community development/storm drainage funds, 2007 wage adjustments.
Bill LaFool from the Human Resources Department. Agenda item 21 is an ordinance providing for a supplemental appropriation in amount just over $1.6 million for wage adjustments for city employees for 2007. It's for all employees, including the appointed mid-management, classified, and all free bargaining units. And next week you'll see a resolution adopting the collective bargaining agreement for the police officers. Following a week after that, you'll see another resolution for the firefighters. But with that kind of brief explanation, I'd be happy to answer any questions about this item.
Questions of Bill? Thank you, Bill. 22.
First reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, conveying Lot 6, Block 7, Crestview Addition to the City of Sioux Falls.
Mayor and Council, this is Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. These next two items are essentially to finalize the sale of two lots that are south of 49th Street and near 52nd and Lewis. This is the location of the old Lewis Tower. That tower has been taken down by the City of Hartford and is now being utilized. We've replaced it with a new composite tower that's near 57th and Arden. There was to back up, these lots were originally acquired in 1973. Once the property was known that it could be surplus, we conducted a public auction on October 26th. We had a number of people there. We had 5 active bidders. This first one, which is Lot 6, sold for $33,000. The appraisal was $52,800. Again, this is an appraised value. It's a guideline. However, as the memo states, as it comes around, the comment came up to me that why wasn't the 90% rule enforced? There's 3 state statutes laid out there. And the first one, which is sale by auction, that if we, the governing board, conducts the auction, we do not have to comply to the 90%. The bidders actually set the price, and again, the appraised value is the guideline. If we were to use a broker or the sealed bid process, we would have to use the 90% rule. So with that, based on the level of interest, I recommend finalization of that Lot 6.
Questions of Mark on item number 22? See no question about?
I guess a question, sale by auction. How was the property on 26th Street sold?
I believe both options were used, Bob, on that. There was a sealed bid and there was an auction held in, at that time we, as I recall, as I understand it, we did not move forward on recommending either. We have that option with an auction. As this one, though, in my opinion, those lots, that's a fair value for those lots, even though the appraised value showed to be significantly higher.
Well, somebody clarify it for me, but I think there was only about $20,000 difference in the bid price on the house on 26th Street versus the appraised value. In this case, there's over $20,000 difference between the purchase price and the appraisal value.
I don't have anything further to share on that. I can certainly come back to you on that.
Get the answer next meeting. Further questions on item 22? Let's go to item 23.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, conveying Lot 8, Block 7, Crestview Addition to the City of Sioux Falls.
Again, we had the auction conducted on the same night. We had 5 active bidders here. This lot was slightly smaller than the other lot we just discussed. This lot was sold for $32,000. The appraised value was $43,600. And based on the level of interest, the amount of public notification, I recommend we finalize this sale.
Questions on item 23? Seeing no questions. Is there a motion to set the hearing date for December 11th for items 20 through 23?
Moved by Brown.
Brown moves. Is there a second?
Second, Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh seconds. Motion made and seconded to set the hearing date for items 20 through 23 for December 11th. Complete discussion. All in favor of that motion will vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Council members Brown,
Yes.
Costello, Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knudsen,
Yes.
Litz,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
All members present voted 6 yes, 2 excused. Items 20, 23, hearing date is set for December 11th. Item 25.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, the city authorizing the issuance of its sales tax revenue bonds in one or more series, authorizing the use of the proceeds thereof to pay the cost of prepaying all or a portion of the city's share of the local costs under the amended and restated commitment agreement dated as of October 1st, 2005 between the city and Lewis and Clark Rural Water Authority, and 2 water-funded projects in the capital improvement plan adopted by the City Council on August 7th, 2006, pledging a portion of the sales and use tax proceeds of the city to the payment of said sales tax revenue bonds, fixing the terms of such sales tax revenue bonds, authorizing the execution and delivery of one or more supplemental indentures between the city and the First National Bank in Sioux Falls, and authorizing the sale, execution, and delivery of such sales tax revenue bonds.
Council member, my name is Gene Rowenhorst. I'm Director of Finance for the City of Sioux Falls. This is the probably the first step that the council is really taking that's going to be concrete in the issuance of a bond issue to prepay the funds due to Lewis and Clark. If you remember back in May, the council approved the engagement of a financial advisor to begin work on coming up with a bond issue and a way of paying for the funds that are due Lewis and Clark over the next few years. Tonight we have with us our financial advisor who was approved by the council. We've also got with us our bond attorney, and we have with us the people that did the water studies. The way we're going to do this tonight, and the reason we asked to switch items 24 and 25 is it just flows a little bit better. The first thing that we're going to do is have Betsy Abbey of the law firm Lindquist and Benham from Minneapolis actually present the ordinance to you. She drafted this ordinance, and we'll review it and answer questions regarding the ordinance. Then Wally Parkins and Woody Woodson of Doherty and Company, our financial advisors, will begin a presentation that will take you through the numbers on the bond issue itself, or the financing. I shouldn't say the bond issue, it's the financing. We haven't figured out exactly what the structure will be at this point. And finally, Steve Burrian will take you through a summary of presentations you've seen before on the change in water rates. The change in water rates are driven primarily by the debt that will be absorbed by the city in floating this bond issue. So with that, I'll ask Betsy to come forward, and she can go through the bond issue, and then Wally and Woody will come up, and Steve Burrian will do the water transaction.
My name is Betsy Abbey. I'm the bond counsel from Lindquist and Benham. Simply, the bond ordinance is a pretty normal structure for a bond issue. The city has done lots of sales tax bonds in the past. The sales tax bonds are the only type of bonds that can be issued for this project because the city does not own any part of Lewis and Clark and is not allowed to own it by federal statute. So sales tax are the only way to go for South Dakota law. In the past, the sales tax bonds have been issued under a master indenture, which means that all the new bonds that are sales tax backed are issued under the same master indenture, and they're on a parity with the prior bonds as long as you meet certain covenants that are required in the master indenture, so that you have enough coverage to pay for the new issue of debt. These sales tax bonds in the ordinance are set to be paid from the second penny sales tax. The timing of this ordinance seems a little premature to some people because the bonds probably won't be issued till end of April, beginning of May, because Lewis and Clark requires the money be on deposit in May. But based on the timetable of reading the ordinance twice, possibility of a referendum, 20 days to take effect. If you back up the timetable, this is what you get to be able to get the money to Lewis and Clark in time for their construction schedule. This ordinance is really set up as a policy for the city, and it's the city's policy to issue the parameters that are set forth in the ordinance. The maximum amount of the bond issue, the maximum length of the issue, the maximum underwriting discount possible, and the maximum interest rate. These factors will change closer to the sale date, partly because Lewis and Clark does not have exact numbers right now as to how much the city owes. So there are upper limits on each one of these things because of that and market conditions. And this ordinance is allowing the city to have it require. Lewis and Clark needs the money from the city to be on deposit with the city so that the construction schedule for the wastewater plant and the pipeline can be built so that the city will have treated water in 2012.
Okay, Bernie. One question I have that might be confusing to the public, you talked about how the second penny is paying for this, but is it in fact that's the collateral essentially being used because water rates will pay for the bonding?
South Dakota statutes only allow sales tax bonds to be issued for things that the city of Sioux Falls does not own. So in essence, the city would issue the bonds being backed by sales tax, and then the water revenues would pay for it. But the water revenues cannot be pledged for this bond issue. So if you were looking at a funds flow, you could take the sales tax to pay the bonds and the water revenues to refund and put the money back into the sales tax coffers.
Further, Kevin?
Let's see, we have about a dozen whereases here. Specifically, my question has to do with the first supplemental indenture through the 10th supplemental indenture. Can you explain to me what those mean?
In essence, starting in, I think it was 1988, the first set of sales tax bonds were issued, and they were issued under an indenture that said you could issue additional sales tax bonds if you met a coverage test. So as the sales tax grew, you could issue more bonds for different kinds of projects that are authorized under the sales tax statute. So in essence, you've issued 10 sets of bonds.
And this will be the 11th?
This would be the 11th.
Okay. If I could, Mr. Chairman, one more question. Everything we've heard is that we are going to, in the course of the next 18 months, pay Lewis and Clark a total of $60 million. $20 million, $20 million, $20 million. Why then do we have a $70 million price tag on this bond?
Well, it's an amount up to. The number that I have in my head, which changes pretty often from Lewis and Clark, is $61.7 million. In addition to that, there's a one-year debt service reserve fund, and that's $4 million in itself. That's what raises that. And then if they decide to do bond insurance, it would be in excess of that. So it's giving you a little cushion for what it really will be. The reserve fund is yours and it'll pay your last debt service, but it's something that bondholders require for kind of liquidity type things. But that's where that dollar amount is. It's not an exact science. Lewis and Clark isn't an exact number at this point, and, try as we may, we haven't been able to get it down yet, and they will get it, down to, the right number, but you can't tell.
Thank you.
Betsy, do you predict that we will, in the end, use derivatives?
That is not, that's a financial advisor question, and why don't you wait for his presentation? It's not a legal issue.
Yes. In the title, it talks about we are going to prepay all or a portion of the city's share of the local cost. Why do we have for a portion of the city's share of the local cost? I thought we were prepaying everything with this.
Well, it's close to everything. Lewis and Clark, the agreement, the amended and restated commitment agreement that you signed with Lewis and Clark in 2005 says that so much it gets paid, but the city has right now, because the wells and some other portions of that will not be built till after, 5-8 years, we're not going to finance that. And so that's why it's a portion. It's not exactly the right, it's not the full commitment, but the full commitment may not be due for 15 years because of the wells and when the city needs the money, when the city needs the water.
And also, too, it has down these indentures between the city and the First National Bank in Sioux Falls. Can you explain why we have the First National Bank in Sioux Falls?
They were chosen as the trustee back in 1988 as the trustee, and because it's a master indenture, and the bonds are in a parity with each other, so if one defaulted, they'd all get a share of what the proceeds. You have to use the same trustee, so all your money is sitting with the same person.
Are there any projects other than Lewis and Clark under these bonds?
If Lewis and Clark, this is a tax question for a bond thing, is that there's a Romanet 1, which is prepaying the city share for Lewis and Clark, and the Romanet 2 is other water-funded projects. It's not likely that the money would ever be used for anything other than Lewis and Clark, and it's not expected to be. But if something dropped off the end of the earth and Lewis and Clark couldn't finance, a federal funding flew off the table or something like that, then there's a tax provision that the city needs to say that they expect to use the money within 3 years. And so the city could use it for other water-funded projects that are already in your CIP budget. But the likelihood is nil. But it's in there to make tax issues.
So then that leaves a question that was brought up earlier in the night. If something happened and Lewis and Clark didn't happen, can we prepay these bonds without penalty?
It depends on, that's a financial advisor question. In normal circumstances, when people sell bonds, there's a prepayment point that there's no penalty. And then you would be paying no prepayment penalty. But if you had to pay them back in advance, you'd have to fund the principal and the interest, and then they could be defeased, which is a bond term of art. The fees means you've legally paid them off, but the money's sitting with the trustee waiting for the bondholders, because you can't legally prepay them, but you have in effect prepaid them by putting the money in a little box.
So you'd be incurring interest.
You would have to prepay the principal and the interest, and you would have to put in that deposit enough money so with its interest earnings it would pay when due the interest on the bonds and the principal. That's the fees. You'd also be earning money on the escrow, and so there's kind of a wash.
Other question, Bob? A question. We received a letter from Mr. Parkins. In it, there's a sentence that says, further, because legal and timing requirements, this ordinance has to be the last city council official action on this bond issue. If that's the case and we don't know the exact amount of the bond, how can that be?
Because this is a not to exceed, which is very normal for bond issues. In fact, I rarely see it anything but, because the numbers almost always change before the final date of the issue. So you're saying that you can't issue bonds in excess of a certain dollar amount.
So if it's in excess of the need, what happens to the funds then?
If it's in excess of $70 million, you can't issue in excess of that. They can't do it.
No, but I'm saying if we bond for more than we have to spend, what happens?
That money stays in the project fund. It earns interest for you and could be used for, in theory, if everything blew up, other water projects, or it could be used to pay back the bonds.
Kevin?
I'd just like to follow up on Pat's question with regard to the water-funded projects in the capital improvement plan adopted by the City Council on August 7th, 2006. I understand you're talking about that they have to be used in 3 years, and the CIP has a 3. I understand all that, but water-funded projects in the capital improvement plan, there's nowhere near 70 million worth of projects. And I don't even know what they are.
It's an abundance of projects, and it's really to make sure that there's no way that this will not meet the federal tax requirements to make these tax-exempt bonds. So if there's something that went away and you were left with $2 million left, you could use it for city-funded projects, and that's really what it's for, because the number from Lewis and Clark is not always, it's changed. It changes often because the estimates change. Timing changes. Just things change. And no one can tell us. No one.
Further questions?
Yes. In the ordinance, it talks about bond purchase agreements or similar agreements providing for the sale of sales tax bonds at an underwriting discount not exceeding 1% and an original issue discount not exceeding 2% of the principal amount of the sales tax bonds. Is that a good discount, or
I'm going to leave that for the financial advisor.
Okay, for the Then also, can I ask about that under Section 3E, interest rate agreements relating to the sales tax bonds, including collars, floors, caps, and/or sweeps, and if we eliminated that from this ordinance, would that eliminate the derivatives?
I'm not positive you couldn't put something in the indenture that said you could do something as opposed to a separate agreement. So, I don't know. Because I've never seen it done in an indenture. I've always seen it done as a separate agreement, but I can't say that there's something I haven't seen.
I guess I'm not sure. It says we can do swaps here.
What your question really is not whether it's in a separate agreement, but if you eliminate that provision, does that eliminate the potential for doing derivatives?
Exactly.
That would eliminate that. Yes.
Okay, that E part, okay.
Further questions?
come back down.
I don't know, I don't know if it's for Wally or for you, Betsy, is it, what is the impact if we don't issue bonds at all?
That's a Steve Brian question.
All right, will you remember that question, please, for me? Okay, thanks.
And again, I'm sorry if this is directed towards you, but Doherty is providing our counsel, our advisor on this project. Who is selling the bonds? Who can sell the bonds? Who cannot sell the bonds?
I drafted a financial advisor contract with the city, and Doherty is not allowed to. It was in the RFP that they weren't allowed to be the underwriter and can't sell the bonds. They're not allowed, period. If this is sold to an underwriter, it cannot be them, period. Flat out. No conflict. That was very clear on the finance department and the legal decided this at the front end, and so that's what I drafted. Cannot be. Cannot.
Yeah, this is just a technical question. In section 2, it talks about the third penny tax. What is that?
That's the third penny tax. I think you call it the entertainment tax.
Oh, okay.
And that is pledged for some of these bonds under the master indenture, and it isn't planning on being pledged for these bonds. And so we just refer to it to bring it forward because that is part of this whole master indenture.
Okay.
Other questions? No, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Others?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Walter Parkins. I'm with the underwriting firm of Doherty and Company, LLC, and we've been engaged as financial advisor in connection with this important financing for the city of Sioux Falls. We had a chance to meet with you about a month ago at an informational meeting, and I'm just going to recap what our current recommendation is regarding these bonds and hold myself open for questions. Yes, Dee?
I would like to know do you predict right now any way that we would use derivatives?
In the market as we see it today, we would not be recommending any derivatives.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Wally.
Okay. We've recommended a 30-year bond for this transaction. We suggest deferring principal on it for 6 years. We're suggesting this long amortization because this is a very long-term asset. In addition, this project is not going to generate any water in the city until 2012. And that's when we recommend beginning paying principal so that the users of the water pay for the water. In addition, the deferral of the principal for 6 years will also minimize the rate impact of the water rate as they have to escalate to pay for this new source of water. The purpose of this financing is to provide water for the future of South Dakota, or Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and we believe those people should pay for that water. So we think this plays in substantially to the water rates that you're going to be setting, since the water payments are really going to pay back the bond. So that's the basis of our recommendation, and it continues to be the 30-year bond with the 6-year deferred principal.
Yes, as far as the 30 years,
Yes, sir.
I suspect you probably calculate different interest rates and how much interest we would be paying over 30 years.
It would affect the rate very slightly whether you did a 20-year or 30-year because the yield curve is extremely flat. Is that
Okay, let's suppose we go with the 30 years.
correct?
Okay, let's suppose we have 5% interest or any other interest you might have calculated. How much interest are we going to pay total?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. On a, assuming the bond issue size of approximately $66 million, with our current interest rate assumption is about 4.47%.
4.47.
On a 30-year bond issue, the total interest to be paid would be $59,370 $59,370,117.66.
Okay, now that's for 30 years, and if we don't pay any principal the first 6, is that what you're
That's correct.
assuming?
That's correct.
What if we did pay on principal the first 6?
I don't have that calculated, but it would reduce the gross amount of interest by some amount, but the present value savings would be minuscule.
It's still interesting to get the figure. Yeah.
Sir, we can run this any way you'd like to see it. I just didn't happen to put together that exact message, but that's very easily to obtain.
How about the 20-year, without paying principal right at the beginning?
If we did a 20-year transaction with 6 years deferred principal, I'm sorry.
Okay, well...
I'm sort of stuck on that method, I'm sorry, since it works so well with the water rates, but I apologize. We can run that any way you'd like it also. But on a 20-year deal with 6 years deferred, the total interest payments would be $41,065,834.54. Now, I have run one additional thing in that regard, okay? The total present value cost of going from 20 years with 6 years deferred interest to 30 years with 6 years deferred interest is $769,743.46, or about 1% of the total cost of the project.
To me, it's $18 million.
Pardon? No, that's cash, not current value. You have to, I mean, in other words, if you're going to pay back $1 in 30 years, that's not worth the same dollar you're paying next year.
Inflation. Oh, sure. But I mean, not including the inflation. I mean, just $41 million for 20 years and $59 million for 30 years. There's about an $18 million difference. And also, you're assuming inflation. We could have deflation.
No. But the difference being that for a present value calculation, you run it at the interest rate on the bonds. If you, okay? Frankly, if we have 30 years of deflation, we'll have much more problem than paying back these bonds. But
I just want to make sure, though. I mean, for people that are, concerned about, when they buy a house, whether to buy for, 15 or 20 or whatever, I mean, they look at the interest rate. And so it is fair to say that we would pay $41,065,000 for 20 years, deferring the principal for 6 years. That's $59,373,000 for 30 years, deferring the 6 years.
That's correct.
Okay.
And the water rates would have to be adjusted accordingly.
Is there any way you can calculate without that 6 years this evening? I don't want you to do it right now while you're asking, but... That
would be very difficult for me. I could do it for you for the next meeting and bring those numbers, but as like everything else, this all runs off a computer and I don't have one.
Okay.
To recap, though, the present value of that number is $700,000.
$769,743.46.
That's the real number that we're talking about.
That's the real number.
By having a 30-year bond versus a 20-year bond.
That's correct.
Okay. Could you speak to the concerns that the gentleman spoke earlier of, the putting the bonds out in a competitive, open marketplace, the prepayment? Deferment of principal we've already talked about. What's the other name? Derivatives, yes. Can you speak to those at this time?
As to prepayment, a typical prepayment schedule on a 30-year bond would say no prepayments for 10 years. Okay? And then they're prepayable from that point going forward. Okay? If you want to shorten that period at which you can call them at par, you may incur additional interest rate on the bonds. Keep in mind, if you're the bond buyer of a 30-year bond, and you're going to buy the 30-year bond, and you're buying the 30-year bond because you think rates are going to go down, not up, because the bonds become more valuable as opposed to less valuable. So if rates go down 2 years after you buy them, you don't want somebody coming and taking that interest rate away. Because if rates go up, they're never going to refund the bond and you're stuck with them for 30 years. Okay? So depending on the climate, investment climate, typically you would have a 10-year call on a 30-year obligation. Okay? Keeping in mind, though, that of that 10 years, the project won't even be functioning for 6. I mean, so unless you win the lottery or something equivalent, it's not very likely you're going to have a ton of extra money during the construction period. Okay? And if you did a 20-year issue, you'd still probably have a 10-year call.
Beyond 10 years, though?
You can write a check anytime you want. Okay? And I'm not trying to confuse you, but there is a way to get rid of the bonds at the end of 5 or 6 years if you want to. It's called defeasance. Okay? Okay. Well, you're not committed to it, but to get out may cost you money or may not, depending on the market at the time, but you can always get out of the deal. Okay? It's just at year 10 you can get out free. Okay? Second question was, the idea of deferring principal.
Yep. And does that impair our rating or our interest rate?
In my judgment, that would not affect the rating these bonds receive. These bonds will be rated as based on the coverage the sales tax provides for the debt service, regardless of whether you do the deferral or not. Okay? This is a unique, excuse me, this is a very unique project because you have an extremely long build-up. Typically, if you do a project, you'd have a 1 or 2 year construction period and it'd be up and functioning. In this particular case, you've got 5 or 6 years before you have any water coming out of it, so it would make sense to all investors as well as rating agencies that you have a deferral of principal until the project's operational.
I think there was one other question. The competitive issue wasn't answered.
The derivatives and...
Well, as I said, if the market would be the same when we sell the bonds as the market is today, we would not recommend a derivative. Okay?
So if we sell the bonds now with no derivatives, derivatives are such a nature that they can be added on at a later time?
Well, we will not be selling these bonds until like April of next year.
Right, but 10 years down the line, couldn't we add derivatives on there?
No, well, technically yes, but in any context that we're thinking of, no. Because what you would do with the derivative, most likely for a situation like this, is you would do short-term bonds and pay somebody to pay that short-term rate, and you would pay them a fixed rate. It'd be a swap transaction, so you'd have to issue those floating rate bonds now. Otherwise, you'd have to do a total refunding in 10 years if you wanted to put the swap on at that point. Does that answer your question? Which would be a new ordinance. I mean, it would be a total refunding, a new deal.
So how much of a concern would it be to you as our advisor to eliminate 3E from this ordinance?
I see my job as your advisor to provide you the lowest possible interest rate with the least possible risk. Okay? I don't know what the market's going to be in April or May of next year. This would be taking one shell out of the rifle, so to speak, so we would lose one tool to providing the lowest interest rate possible. That's what that would amount to.
Further questions? I'm not sure you addressed the first one item that Mr. Lauer brought up, sold as competitive open bids.
That will depend a little bit on the final bond structure and what the market is at the time. Okay, we are aware of what it costs to do an underwritten transaction as opposed to a competitive sale. If we think the market would be more receptive to a negotiated sale, that's what we'd recommend. But we do understand how to differentiate in cost, and the real issue is, what's the total cost of the city? Not what did you pay in fees, but what did you get in interest rate, what you paid in fees to generate the lowest possible cost of financing. So that's something I think we should leave open until we
Sorry, Mr.
That's something I think we should leave open until we sell the bonds.
Wally, I know that our city has talked about the Lewis and Clark project for a long time, and I believe it's time to get it done. But for anyone out there, any citizen out there who has any serious concerns about us issuing bonds at this level, I mean, what would I tell them as far as what would the water rates have to be if we did not issue bonds like we're talking about?
Well, I guess there's two things. If, on the assumption we want to get water from Lewis and Clark by 2012, if that's the working assumption.
Yes, and that would be an assumption.
That would be a working assumption. In order, as I understand it, from all the meetings we've been in order to have treated water delivered to the city of Sioux Falls by 2012, it's necessary to bid and start construction on the water treatment plant. Okay? To do that, there has to be on deposit this $60+ million worth of funds, because no contractor is going to start that project without knowing that there's money there to pay for it. So I guess if you wanted to do a let's pay for it today, we'd have to find a way for the city of Sioux Falls to find $61 or $2 million to deposit on the Nashville Bay of May 1 or with Lewis and Clark. So I don't know what that would do to water. I presume you couldn't do that through water rates because nobody could afford to write the check for the water bill to do that because the money would have to be collected by May 1.
Further questions?
You know, I still need clarification on the competitive open bids part.
Okay.
Are we doing that? Is that a possibility?
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. There's two ways to sell bonds. Okay, one is you structure a bond issue. You send it out and you put out official notices and say we're taking bids on these bonds on April 20th and we have to close. And we're going to sell it to the lowest bidder. Right? On that day, magically, the bids get opened and XYZ has bought those bonds and they have to go resell. Okay? And in that case, their profit has to be made on those bonds based on the interest rate they're buying them at versus what they're selling at. Okay? That would be a competitive sale. The other way to do it would be a negotiated sale, where you work with an underwriter. And the underwriter gets a fee for doing it, but he sells it to the public at the same price he pays for it. Okay? So you have to look at what you think you can get for interest rates under both scenarios to see if the underwriter is going to earn his fee or if you'd be as well off with the competitive sale.
And we may go either way.
We may go either way depending on the market. Typically, if you had a very stable market, you may choose a competitive sale because you're building a bond for them before they go sell it, okay? If you were in a more volatile situation or had a more unique bond, you'd probably do the negotiated sale because the underwriter could explain it to the bond purchaser for an extended period of time because he knew he had the bonds to sell.
So if we're doing this today, which way would we go? And why?
Today's market would probably go competitive sale. We have a very, very attractive bond market right now. Long-term bond rates are very low by historic standards, okay? And we have not quite an inverted yield curve, so you can sell long bonds at very attractive rates, and it's been very stable, and the rates have been going down. This would be probably a market we'd probably do a competitive sale, I would guess. But you know, the world isn't always like it is today, unfortunately.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is Section 3C in the agreement, when it talks about bond purchase agreements, is that for the negotiated agreement?
That would be for a negotiated purchase, yes.
And is that a good deal, though? Couldn't we get it below 1%? Could we get it below 2%?
No, wait a minute. This says up to.
I know.
Okay? It's my job to make that as close to zero as possible, okay? But we do need the leeway in the event we had, I mean,
so
it seems to me we don't want to be cutting out all kinds of options here to sort of put us in a cement overcoat. We want to keep those open. That's why we've suggested not to exceed numbers, because we just don't know where the world will be in 6 months.
Okay, but today, what would a good number be today? It wouldn't be 1%, so it would be less. So
I would think a good number in today's market would be in the neighborhood of 3/8 to a half.
At what point in time do you anticipate making the decision on whether or not to go to an open, competitive, or negotiated?
I would guess a month to 6 weeks before we would actually sell. I mean, you know, we are in a very fast pace of change in this world with the information age. Everything moves very quickly. So, you know, we've got a very stable market, et cetera, now. That could change dramatically and quickly, so we want to be prepared to move if we have to move.
Given the fact that December 18th, this body is done with the decision-making process, do you understand why that's a little bit uncomfortable for this group? We can't come to you afterwards and say, you know what, we want to be competitive in a competitive bid environment, or we don't want to do the derivatives. It's out of our hands at that point.
That's correct. I understand.
And you
I understand that's scary. I understand that's scary, yes. It's like sending your child off to college. Okay? I mean, yes, I understand it's scary. But I understand this is a scary amount. You do this on all bond issues. But this is bigger, and so it's scary. I mean, I appreciate that.
Along with what Vernon says, I couldn't agree with him more. And I guess as a sidebar comment, I would just say that it's important for us to make sure that we understand the implications of what we're doing tonight, but it's also important for us to make sure that we listen to our advisors and have some reasonable trust of the administration and that we're acting in the best interest of the city.
I would agree. I'm still a little unclear on the whole issue of derivatives, swaps, whatever you want to call them.
Okay.
Could you just enlighten me with a 10-cent explanation?
If we had a high long-term rate and a low short-term rate, okay, we would be able to find responsible, credit-worthy financial institutions that would lend us the money at lower than the long-term fixed rate. If we would agree to pay them an amount, they would pay our short-term rate. Okay? In that transaction, my expectation is they're going to be compensated for the risk they take. Okay? Because there's no Santa Claus, even though we're getting close to Christmas. Okay? But if the city could save money in doing that without any substantial risk, okay, the city should take that opportunity even if somebody else makes money.
Certainly. But what are the risks, and how can this go south?
How can this go south? Well, I guess one of the reasons we would want to use a very responsible and a very creditworthy AAA type provider is that they wouldn't have a default risk, so that they're always able to make the short-term rate when we pay them the long-term rate. Okay? That would be the biggest risk. Second thing you got to keep in mind is if we're going to do a swap, it's just like selling long-term bonds. If you do a swap and decide you don't like that deal anymore, you have to come to an accounting with the swap provider just like you do with the long-term bondholders if you want to pay them off early. Okay? you have to have a swap settlement, it's called. So if you swap the whole 30 years and wanted to pay them off early, you would have to come to a swap agreement. There's all kinds of variations on how this could be done. Okay, a portion of it could be done that way that would amortize off within 10 years, so you wouldn't have that risk. Okay, but there. For some reason, everybody is sort of assumes that doing long-term fixed-rate financing is no risk necessarily, okay? But there are risks because you maybe could have done it cheaper. They forget, I mean, they're only looking at, it can't get any worse, but it can never get any better, okay? And the swap would give you some potential benefits of it getting better.
If you didn't use a swap, what if the market changed to the extent that it was in our best? We do a lot of refinancing of bonds.
Yes.
How does that compare to a swap?
Well, the refinancing is if you're going to do a refinancing of a bond, if you do this bond issue and assume the rate is 4% to pick them up, okay? And 7 years from now, you can do those bonds at 3%. In that case, you refund those bonds and issue them at 3. Okay? When you do that, you have to defease the bonds. And we're getting into a lot of technicalities here, and I apologize. I don't know how else to explain it to you. But when you go to defease those old bonds, you're paying off 4% bonds, but you can only reinvest the money at 2.5%. So you have negative arbitrage for those 3 years, so you pay a premium to get rid of those old bonds. Either that, or even if you're in a 3% market, you pay 4% until the call date. Okay? So the difference with the derivative is there's a party between you and the bondholders, and you make them one payment for paying back a different payment. An alternative would be for the city to issue variable rate debt. Okay? And if the city issued variable rate debt, every 7 days the interest rate would change on those bonds. If you'd done that 5 years ago, you would be grinning greatly right now, because those short-term rates have been very, very low as 1% for a considerable period of time, a couple of years ago. You'd save a lot of money as opposed to issuing fixed rate debt. In a swap situation, somebody takes that risk and provides you a lower rate than your fixed rate would have been.
Further questions?
While I might be a little bit silly here, my first husband and I were talking about swaps last night, and my question is, so how many has the swap option been out there for ever? I mean, for very long.
Yeah, relatively long time, over 10 years. Okay.
Yeah, you're providing a service to the city of Sioux Falls.
That's correct.
How are we compensating you?
You're going to write me a check when the bond closes.
What's that?
You're going to write me a check when the bond closes.
Yeah, I was just wondering.
It's a fixed fee.
And that's.
It makes a difference whether or not we do it. When this was originally negotiated, there wasn't quite the clarity as how we were going to do the transaction. And at one time there was a thought we'd do the bonds a third, and a third, for example. Okay? Mm-hmm. So I was going to get paid a different price if we did it in 3 or did it in 1. Mm-hmm. And it's going to vary a little bit by the size of the transaction. Okay? My best guess, without having the contract in front of me, and it's been a few months, but it's $65,000.
$65,000.
That's the best guess. If somebody says no, it's $66,200 or $64,100. I can't tell you that because it's a formula, but that's the number.
That's just kind of really just a basic. Is that probably just a basic fee? What if we got involved in a lot of derivatives and so forth, and that would naturally increase the fees and so forth.
No, this is a redo the deal.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
doing all this extra work is not in my best interest.
Wally, you said derivatives have been around for, I think you said around 10 years. Any
I'm
of our
guessing
bonds that we have now?
City,
include any derivative?
to the best of my knowledge, the city of Sioux Falls has not used any derivatives.
Not yet, okay. And this may not be a question for you, but I'll put it out there.
Yeah.
By doing the deferral of principal payments for the first 6 years, we are saving a certain amount of money each year, because by prepaying, we don't have the quarterly payments to Lewis and Clark anymore. Do you know what that dollar amount is we save every year?
I understand that the quarterly payments would accumulate to $5.9 million a year for the year 2007, and the bond payments are going to be a very small number because of the
350, 400,000?
under half million.
Okay.
So that's a huge savings.
Okay.
And
What do we do with that savings? Where's that money going to be spent?
It's, as I understand it currently, it's not going to come out of the tax, or of the water users. In the rate schedule that's being proposed, it's only covering the $350,000 to $400,000 and not being charged. So instead of writing a check for a water bill of $54, I write a check for $47.
So in other words, the rate increases that have been proposed and probably will be voted upon year after year for the next 6 years would be higher if we had principal and interest.
Significantly higher.
Thank you.
Further questions, Wally? Thank you very much. Others that wish to address the council on item number 25?
The other issue being that we propose using the second penny sales tax, and Mr. Woodson has a presentation as to how that affects your use of the second penny for other purposes.
Okay, we'll go ahead.
My real name is Ray Woodson. I'm with Doherty and Company. And we'll turn to the next page. Most of you saw this page on the November 4th reading. We've made a modification really in table number 2 to take out the payment for the east side sewer, since you put in the water reclamation ordinance and now intend to pay that from those rates, so we have taken that out. The east side sewer was originally, when it was originally issued, was thought to be paid for from second penny, but the second penny was not pledged to the repayment, so we were comfortable in taking it out of this presentation. And that was about just under $3 million a year. So column 14, or column 3, reflects that. Just as you go again, what we have in that table is the 2006, you see the sales tax collections, the second penny were $37 million. For 2007, we increased that by 7%, and then from there on down, we've grown it by 5%. Then column 3 is all the debt for repayment from the second penny. That includes both of the storm sewer bonds, both where it's pledged and not pledged. It also includes the other existing bond issues outstanding on the convention center and pavilion, as well as something else. But the police station, there's one that also will get paid off. So you see that drops over time. Now, keep in mind that does have in that column the payments for Lewis and Clark, because the sales tax is pledged to that repayment. So we've left that in there. We don't think it should come out of that column necessarily, even if you do the water rate ordinance, because it is a pledged revenue. It somewhat is subject to the council interpretation of the city's policy of attempting to have 2 times coverage, and what they wanted in there for that purpose, or should have it in there for maintaining that policy. But at least for our presentation, we have assumed that it will be in there because the second penny is pledged. The next column then says, after all the debt service pledged or not, because the storm sewer is not pledged, but you're paying for it from there, for example, is in that column 3. That's the amount of revenue available after debt service of the second penny on an annual basis. And you'll see how that grows over time. And then column 5 is the amount in excess of the 2 times coverage, assuming that you want to maintain 2 times. The policy is to have 2 times coverage. This is how much you would have if you maintain 2 times coverage on your debt service. How much, in addition to that, would there be that you potentially could use for additional financing and still maintain the 2 times coverage? Let's talk about this page, and then I'll go to the next page.
Okay, let's go ahead and get it.
The 2 times is a city self-imposed restriction, which is above state law, which is 1.5.
No, state law has no provision. Our existing indentures that we keep, that we had of 1 through 11, have a 150 coverage or 1.5 coverage, which is very common for sales tax type bonds. A little bit on the high side, we do other cities, I have done other cities as low as 125, but they probably pay a little higher interest rate. There's, and the rating is a little bit better on the sales tax bonds with a 150 coverage than a 125 coverage, for example.
But our city self-imposed 2 times is substantially.
Yes, and like I said, that policy says the city will attempt to maintain, I think that's the correct language, a 2 times coverage. So this is working within that policy and trying to show you the impact of having that policy in place.
Other questions on that page?
No.
Let's go to the next one then.
The next page, you want to click, we did, and there's your 15 million. Let's look at that 2008. And that 15 million is what's carried over from the previous page. And that's how much you have in excess of 2 times. Keep in mind, to maintain 2 times, you can only spend half that, okay? Because you spend half of it and you double it to get 2 times, so you take the 15 and have to cut it in half in order to maintain the 2 times. If you do that in 2008, if you issued 10-year bonds at that time, that you would generate about $53 million in bonds that you could issue at that point in time. If you did 20-year bonds, about $84 million in bonds at that point in time with that money. And dropping down to 2011, you'll see that it's growing to 20. First of all, the police department, the police station stayed off for that time, and there's something else stayed off for that time. So the amount of debt has dropped, and you've gotten some increase in sales tax. But that number then is like 26 million. At that point in time, in 2011, obviously you didn't issue the ones in 2008 because you can't, take it away. 10-year bonds you could issue 89 million, and 20-year bonds you could issue about 140 million with half that money. So I mean, I don't think that you're seriously impacting the ability of the city to finance in the future by having gone out and issued this $60 million worth of bonds and pledging the second penny against it. There is going to be dollars available. All of the dollars are available except the actual debt service that you have. And in practice, the numbers on column 5 back on the previous page, because on 3 include Lewis and Clark, and so really the Lewis and Clark payment could be added to that column also. But
So Ray, just so we're clear, the future bonding capability you're talking about here, that's not bonds issued in 2008 for Lewis and Clark. These are something we haven't even thought of yet.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about just what would the funds projected to be available if you wanted to do something in 2008, what could you do? And that happened to be, the 15 is the lowest number on the page, and so that's why I picked that one. Your coverage is the lowest at that point in time, partially because you're starting to pay some other things off.
Further questions on that? Okay, let's move on.
Mayor Munson, members of the City Council, my name is Steve Burrian. I'm the CEO of Advanced Engineering and Environmental Services. My role in recent years at the City of Sioux Falls has been threefold. One, to help you with some water supply planning in 2005. One, to help you with some technical representation as it related to the Lewis and Clark Water System Project on behalf of the City of Sioux Falls. And lastly, to work on rate planning with both your water division and your water reclamation division. Through the process that the city has developed, I've been before you numerous times, I guess, in recent months, and I think the process has unfolded in a way where we've got that information out in front of you. And so what I've been asked to do this evening is to just give a very brief summary of the rate impacts of the presentation that's been given today, along with the rest of the aspects of your water division. The first slide that I have before you it comes from the recommendations of the 2005 water rate study. And I've mentioned these to you before, but the obvious one is we need to make sure that we continue to cover all of our operating and our capital costs. We need to implement a plan to fund the Lewis and Clark Regional Water System Project, and at that time it was under a variety of funding scenarios. Tonight we have a specific one in front of you. I've recommended that you add some specific operating debt service and rate stabilization drought contingency reserves to your water division. It was my recommendation that you minimize the impact of the LCR-WS cards on current users. In fact, if we want to talk about deferred principal, I probably should have that bullseye squarely painted on you, because I think for a variety of reasons, I recommend that that's a prudent step for the City of Sioux Falls. I'd be glad to answer that question in more detail. There were some minor cost of service inequities as we looked at the different ways to allocate costs to users. I recommend that you fix those. The presentation tonight has done so. We recommend that the financial division remain standing on its own. For the water reclamation division, you did have some infrastructure you were funding through sales tax. We don't have anything like that in the water division, and I recommend you keep it that way. And then lastly, I recommend that you continue to do this on an annual basis rather than every so many years that you had done in the past, since tonight constitutes that review as we look at the 2007 water rates. In terms of the information that I had before me to complete this analysis, much of it was very consistent with what we used back in 2005. However, I did have the benefit of the 2007 operation and maintenance budget, which didn't exist at that point in time. Your staff also did a very diligent job of updating your capital improvements plan, and so we had that plan from 2007 through 2011. As noted here, all of the other assumptions were consistent with 2005 rate study, so there are no surprises. In terms of an operating reserve, just as a reminder, we are recommending that you maintain 90 days of O&M at all times, or a quarter of your year of operation and maintenance expenses. And we're also recommending that you implement a rate stabilization fund. And what we did is we realized that with all the heavy burdens you're going to have in the near term, that we didn't recommend that you fund that fully until the end of the planning horizon in 2015. It should give you a brief reminder on why we recommended this fund, is that when you go to buy water from Lewis and Clark, the incremental operating money that you pay to Lewis and Clark is going to be slightly higher than your incremental cost of internal production. So should you have a drought, where instead of buying the minimum from Lewis and Clark, which we have incorporated into our water rate model, but in a severe drought, if you're forced to buy more than that minimum, you're going to be paying more than what you've budgeted for your O&M. And so rather than having to go into rate shock at that point in time, this rate fund, this stabilization fund, that could then be used during that drought to try to offset some of those surprise costs. The other information that I had before me that I didn't have when I made this presentation back in January 2006, as we've dialed in on a recommended strategy for the Lewis and Clark Regional Water System Project. It has to do with the prepayment. As we mentioned earlier, it's our understanding that this project, the Lewis and Clark project, will not be constructed successfully to get treated water to Sioux Falls by 2012 without some type of prepayment at the current federal funding level. So it would take drastically higher federal funding levels to change that. Tonight, the information I'm presenting is for a 66.37 bond. That's consistent with the cost that we need to have to prepay all of Lewis and Clark except for the wellfield expansion. The reason that we recommended pulling the wellfield expansion out is you don't need the water right now. That's a component of the project that is easily feasible, whereas the water plant and the pipeline is a one-time opportunity. And so rather than prepaying that and having to construct it, we're recommending that Sioux Falls call for that water when you need it, obviously several years in advance, and they build that wellfield at that time and you fund it at that time. So that's not included in this analysis. I think that as Wally mentioned, the reason that those numbers are grossed up from 60.7 to 66.7 is to cover the debt service reserve fund, the issuance costs, and the bond insurance. And as we understand it, then Lewis and Clark would use your money in 3 payments, 20.5 in 7, 20.5 in 8, and 25.5 in late, or 19.7 in late 8. And so when you see the analysis that I'm going to present, you will generate some income, interest income, on the bond proceeds that you don't turn over to Lewis and Clark. And so even with deferred payments, those payments are going to get ramped up because we'll have the netting or the offsetting benefits of the interest income that you generate. We then just assume that you'd have semi-annual interest payments as part of this bond and then annual principal payments on the bond. If we move into the bottom line, what are the projected rate impacts? What I have here is the projected impacts for the residential and commercial rate classes through 2015. If you remember the whole premise of our study, the 2007 number is going to be a recommendation. The out years are projections based on the best information that we have available at this time, and you'll get another crack at those, since you only would be accepting that in philosophy. For residential, we're anticipating you need a rate increase of 12% for both the meter and flow. For commercial, that's bumped up slightly due to some minor inequities in the cost of service, up to 14% in 2007. Switching over then to the industrial and the North Lincoln systems, there we are looking at John Morrell, or the industrial, having a 12% increase in 2007, and for North Lincoln, a similar increase of 12% in 2007. The reason I stammered for a second, if I may just take you back to this number. One other thing that I forgot to mention this evening is that when we made the recommendation, you went to do expanded capacity with Lewis and Clark. The numbers that you had were 10 MGD of original capacity and 17 MGD of additional capacity. More recently, Lewis and Clark has realized that they have some what's called unallocated capacity, and it comes from a couple different sources. And it was my recommendation, I guess kind of a strong recommendation, that you take advantage of that capacity. In fact, I have some numbers that show that that's probably the cheapest water you're going to get anytime now or in the future in terms of taking additional capacity. And so all the numbers that I'm presenting tonight are for 10 MGD of original capacity and 18 MGD of additional capacity rather than 17. So you have one more MGD than we were talking about historically. Sorry about that. Let's pause. If we switch then to what this bond looks like, you heard from Wally some of the details about it, but if we look at what this really means to the bottom line for the city of Sioux Falls, it's anticipated that in 2007, with a 30-year ammo and a 6-year deferred principal payment, because you have about a $385,000 interest payment with the net of your interest income pulled out from that. In 2008, that would jump to roughly $2 million, because now we were paying on 2 different payments, and the third one is generating interest. And then by 9, 10, 11, and 12, we essentially flatline for the remainder of that 6 years of deferred principal at the remaining interest payments that we have for the entire note, after which then the 7th year kicks in, and roughly $4.56 million is the amount of money that the kind of a level debt for the remaining 24 years would be for the city of Sioux Falls. But what I also show on here is, in addition to coverage on the sales tax, you also have some coverage policies for your water utility at 110%. And so what we were showing here is that you were maintaining that coverage covenant at all times within the city of Sioux Falls. And then lastly, down below, we did talk a little bit about the reserves. We didn't try to aggressively meet those reserves responsibly, and so we ramped up to those reserves in 10 and 11. We have a major project that takes some of the reserve money away. That 2011 project is somewhat tenuous, however, and so we felt that it was okay to do that. In reality, you may be able to get by a little more cheaper on that project, and that's the interconnect between Lewis and Clark and Sioux Falls. I think your staff has found a less expensive way to do that than what's in the August approved CIP. And in addition, you'll see the rate stabilization fund, because you won't start using Lewis and Clark water till 12. We didn't set that target till 15, and we were able to fund it by 2014. What this all means graphically, and some of us really like this graphic, and hopefully you feel the same way when I'm done presenting, but what we show here in the purple line is, or with the squares, is the recommended rate increases for the residents within the city. Obviously, it's a little bit different from some of the others, and so you can see that's 12, bumping up slightly to 13 for a 5-year period, after which time you've met your needs, and it actually goes down to our current projections of 0 rate increases needed beyond that 5-year period. The reason, however, that we felt it was so important to look at the the funding strategy that we did is that the other two lines, the pink line is the total reserve that we're recommending that you ultimately achieve with your operating reserve and with your drought contingency reserve. And the blue line with squares is the operating reserve that we recommend that you maintain. And then what's shown on here in the brown bars is your actual operating reserve. So you can see in the near term we're able to achieve that in all years except 11, and then we were able to renew that again in 12 and maintain it throughout the planning period. The blue bar then is your restabilization fund. The first blue bar is actually a harbinger of your old EDS fund. There's a little bit of money left over in that EDS fund. We spend that down as part of this rate planning process and then don't go back to generating that until 12, and that doesn't reach the pink line until 2014, and so we create kind of a soft landing. If you remember back to the November 4th meeting, I presented a 20-year constant amortization schedule as well. And what happens there by virtue of where you've been, where you are now, and where you're projected to be, is our analysis showed that you're going to, once you did those major increases in the near term to cover the non-deferred principal, you generated so much cash in the out years that that blue bar spun out of control on you, and you were generating much more cash than you needed. And so by virtue of where you've been, and where you've been is, prior to us working with you, you hadn't had a rate increase in water until since 1994, and you've been living very heavily off your significant cash fund. And that works fine until the point where all of a sudden that fund is waning, and all of a sudden when your revenues aren't there to exceed your expenses, you have that delta to make up, plus any new dollars that you have to project. And what the deferred principal does is allows you to work through that situation as well as then create a soft landing in the out years. And according to Woody and Wally, it's still a very responsible, marketable bond that you would sell then out in the market. One of the questions we always try to bring to answer as part of our presentations is, what does this mean from a benchmarking perspective? I think when we initially began to work with you, you were pretty much on the lowest level of this graph. This graph is from our North Central Regional Rate Study. It shows an average user using 7,500 gallons of water per month. With your 2006 adjustments, and these are all 2006 numbers, you can see that you were still on the very low end of water rates. And once again, if we implemented the 12% increase that's been recommended tonight, and we couple that with nobody else increasing their rates in 2006, we'd see it could be right on the cusp of the lower quartile in terms of rates. In terms of what this means to specific users, and I put a couple different approaches in here. If your user uses 5,000 gallons a month, or you use 7,500 gallons a month, you can see the increase would be somewhere between $1.46 and $2.06, and the monthly charge would be either $13.48 or $19.17. That concludes my portion of the presentation on the rate impacts of your water utility plans for 2007, along with the proposed list report strategy. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have, and I know there was one that I'm supposed to remember as well.
Steve.
Yes.
The logic of deferring principal payments for 6 years states that future users should pay for those volumes of water that are going to be delivered, but not until then. Why then, and I'm looking at page 11, we show rate increases in 07 through 011, but then after that, there are no rate increases. Did you just not plan that far ahead, or are we really looking at no rate increases from 2012 on, when that's when the water is going to start being delivered?
The answer that's been given on why it's defensible to have a deferred principal through 2012 from a city standpoint is that it does mesh very well with when the water will be delivered to the city of Sioux Falls. From a rate planning perspective, and you know, I was dealt maybe a little different hand in terms of the game that one's playing, because of the fact that we had some catch up to do, if that's a fair way, in terms of the amount of money that was being drawn from your reserve funds historically, and those reserve funds approaching the point where they weren't going to be available in the ensuing years to cover those types of expenses. The major reason for me recommending deferred principal payments was to allow the city of Sioux Falls to create a rate increase schedule similar to this where we had a series of relatively even, a series of relatively responsible increases that would then create a soft landing in the out years. And so in some ways, we look at it and we say that they're really not having to pay anymore in this term. I guess the way that I look at it is somebody posed the question, what if we continued to cash flow Lewis and Clark like we have been in the present? Well, the first answer to that question is, quite honestly, we would not be able to get water through Sioux Falls by 2012. So if we just park that and say, okay, I can live with that, just keep building the pipe. I did some quick analysis on what the impacts would be to Sioux Falls if you just kept cash flowing the way you have. The projected increase for 2007 under that scenario is 35% instead of 12. The projected increase for 2008 is 24% under that scenario, and the recommended increase under 2009 is back to the 12.5%. And then actually we get to the zero then under that scenario by 2011. But we put so much money in up front that I think that's an irresponsible approach with your ratepayers, and it generates so much cash in the out years that you create almost a cyclical type rate structure where you go up, 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 and then you have to go down, down, down. And the deferred payments allowed me to take past, present, and future and create an overall strategy where everything fit together nicely as the project came to fruition in 2012.
I understand the principle of, or the concept of not paying principal for the first 6 years, but again, why no increases after 2012? When that's when the water is delivered, that's when supposedly new customers that may not exist today are paying for that water. It appears from me, just by looking at this, that you're ramping up the rates to existing users, and then you stop when the water is delivered.
And I guess that could be the perception, but if you look at this graph that I'm sending to you, this was meant to overcome that type of concern. You can see that with the increases we've recommended, you're staying at your operating reserve, just right on the target to your operating reserve, a little bit less in 2011. If we don't move forward with these increases as they're proposed with the deferred payments, you will continue to use cash out of your water utility fund because you will not have sufficient water rate revenues to cover your costs. And so what we're essentially doing with this proposal is with these increases, we're getting you to break even in 8, 9, and 10. We're actually losing a little bit 11, and it comes together in 12. It doesn't answer your question, Councilmember Kavanaugh, about people paying in 2012, but from a rate planning standpoint, this is what we needed to provide an amicable solution for the city of Sioux Falls.
Questions?
Yes, after listening to Ray a little bit and Betsy, the question Vernon posed a while back to Betsy, I'm not sure I still understand it now. But with this water rate increase from the second penny sales tax, are we actually paying for this debt with the second penny sales tax and then reimbursing the second penny sales tax fund or whatever that comes out of with the water rate increase? Is that the mechanics of it?
Mechanistically, I guess I'm not sure if I don't think that you pay with sales tax and then pay the sales tax back. I think mechanistically you defer the payment with water revenues before you ever get to the second penny. The second penny is merely there to back the collateral in the event that the water rate revenues would be inadequate to fund it. But it's the city's full intention, and the rate plan has been fully developed so that all of the bond payments will be fully covered by the water utility division revenues.
Further questions?
Yeah, I know this is maybe a tough question to try to answer, but we're trying to pay for all this pipe and everything, but we're going to be paying additional costs with those additional wells that would be put in. Any idea how much we might be anticipating in the future paying extra?
If memory serves me right, and I guess I'd like to have the same liberties that Bob Harkins asked for in terms of not having that number right in front of him. Memory serves me right, I think that was a $5 million number that was carved off for future contributions.
Kevin Smith with the Office of Public Works. In today's dollars, it'd be about $7.7 million, but that's an improvement that will only be constructed as the city calls for it. So depending on what our water needs are, it could be another 20 years before that well field expansion is needed. And when we looked at it from a water supply engineering standpoint, there's no sense in putting those costs into the ground now when they're not going to be needed for that long a period of time. So there will be a time where we have to pay more. I would also say there will be a true-up at the end of the project. So there is the possibility that it ends up costing us less, and we don't know what that number is going to be either.
Can I just ask one question here, Kevin? And that is, do we have a formal contract with Lewis and Clark saying once we prepay that's kind of it? Or is this kind of an understanding?
We have an amended and restated commitment agreement whereby we are committed to all of our costs to Lewis and Clark. The issue is how much do we pay at what time? Now, the amended and restated commitment agreement laid out a payment plan through the year 2011. What this prepayment plan is going to do is sort of remove that. That's why we're not going to make our quarterly dues payments. All we have to worry about is bond payments. So we're only responsible for our proportionate share. But as time goes on, with construction inflation and as everyone else has discussed, the project is just going to get more and more expensive the longer we wait to prepay.
Just point of clarification.
But yes, the indexing stops or the inflation stops once we pay.
And that's in our agreement with them, or is that just an
That's
understanding?
in a letter we have from the Bureau of Reclamation.
Just for clarification, the well fields that we're talking about that come online in the future are Lewis and Clark well fields, not city well fields.
They're Lewis and Clark well fields, but it is at our discretion when those get constructed.
I'm just curious of the other members of the Lewis and Clark, how does that impact them?
Well, if other members have additional water quantity needs, that is something that they'll have to discuss with Lewis and Clark.
But we were the only users of that additional capacity, so as well as sense in the science water.
Okay.
Bob Litz. Kevin, Sioux Falls is going to put this money into Lewis and Clark, and it's my understanding it's going into their general fund sort of thing. How many other contributors besides the federal government have put in amounts of money? And just in rough ballpark figures, how much? Who are they, and how much is it? And if Sioux Falls is putting in that amount of money, and they're putting it into this kind of a general fund, and I understand how construction projects start in the beginning and they go on through. What guarantees do we have that Sioux Falls is going to get their money's worth out of this deal at all?
Well, Lewis and Clark is committed to finishing those portions of the project first to get the transmission line completed and to let the contract for the water treatment plant. If all goes as planned, especially with our bond issuance, they would let a contract for the treatment plant next year. And the transmission line is essentially either constructed or portions of it are under contract to be constructed. And we have I would say we don't have any concerns that the segments that are necessary to bring treated water to the city of Sioux Falls will be completed by 2012, if not a year earlier. I think the bigger question is for those communities, Bob, that prepaid, let's say the small town of Madison, South Dakota, they've prepaid all of their funding or all of their financial commitment, and they're not going to get water any sooner than they were going to before. So they're the members really making somewhat of a leap. They're making a leap of faith that Lewis and Clark will continue to get federal funds, not just the bond issuance by us. And I believe that was in the resolution that the council passed about prepayment, directing where those funds went. But I don't have a copy of the resolution in front of me.
Further questions?
Yeah, I do have a question here about the bond issue is going to be $66.37 million on April 15, 2007. Then $20.5 million will be given to Lewis and Clark on 5/1/2007 and 2008 and so forth. what's going to happen to that money that, you know, we're going to have $40 million after we make our first payment to Lewis and Clark on May 1st, 2007.
Well, now it's my chance to defer to someone else.
Okay.
Is that either up to Wally or Gene? I guess, Councilmember Staggers, if you refer back to this slide, the constant interest on that on $60 million note was $2.9 million, which is shown in 2009, for the $66 million note. And because we were able to hold $40 million roughly of that the first year, our interest payment net is much lower because we pay interest on the whole amount, but we gain interest on the 40 that we keep. Then in the second year, because we've now transferred 40 million of that, and we only have 20 million roughly in our pocket, so you see the interest payment is a little bit higher, or it's higher, but not quite 2.9, and then not till 2.9 do we kick in with the full interest, and then that goes all the way to the end of the deferred principal payment period. So we would hold that in that trust account that was discussed, and we'd be making interest on that.
Okay.
Further questions?
Just one other question. It was mentioned earlier that you know, well, we could have done one bond issue or 3 different bond issues. Why didn't we do 3 different bond issues?
There was some indecision at the beginning, as I understand it, on Lewis and Clark Larson's interpretation when they worked with everybody on where the money had to reside. Could it, you know, reside in a good intention? Did it have to reside with them? Could it reside with us? And when the discussion was about the potential of issuing 3 bonds, there was hopes at one time that we could sell a bond and just have a commitment to sell 2 more, and that was deemed unacceptable from the standpoint of what we needed to stop the indexing of our project. And what was deemed necessary is that we needed to have all the money in hand, and then we only needed to transfer it to them in roughly this 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 approach. And so when Wally and Woody were originally hired, that had not been determined by outside sources yet, and then we received that determination that we had to have it all in hand at one time in order for the process that we were attempting to implement to be successful.
Okay.
Other questions? Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Gene? I see some eyes glazing over and a few yawns and things like that, and I apologize. It's been a lengthy evening for this particular subject, but clearly this is probably the biggest decision that's going to be made for the city of Sioux Falls for a lot of years to come. And it's very, very important. I think you can see that we've got some of the finest people that you could have decked against this project, and they're doing an outstanding job of putting it together. And you know, we're very comfortable working with them. This stuff isn't all easy to understand. We understand that, and I want to invite everyone, every council member, please feel free to call me at any time during the next 2 weeks. I will go almost anywhere, and I will go at almost any time to meet with you, to discuss with one of you or 4 of you at a time, or however you want to do it, to clarify a lot of what was discussed tonight. And if I can't clarify it, we'll get somebody on the phone or get them in my office or something like that will sit with you and help you understand what is really transpiring here. So with that, thank you very much. And again, I apologize for taking so long, but I think for what project we're involved in, it's very useful. Thank you. Kevin.
Just a comment. Yes, it took a long time, Gene, and yes, there might be some eyes glazed over, but I just want to thank you and everybody that presented tonight, because I think we've got a lot of questions answered. I feel much more comfortable knowing what I'm asked to do in a couple of weeks, and I hope the public does too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, if nobody has any other questions, could we take a 5-minute recess?
Well, can we vote on this and get this?
Just the first reading.
We got to have a motion to set the hearing date for December 18th for items 24 to 24. Oh, can you read the title of 24, please?
First reading an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the revised ordinances of the city by increasing water rates.
And there's no further questions. Is there a motion to set the hearing date for December 18th for items 24 and 25? Bob? I saved it till this part of the ordinance, but nowhere, anywhere, is there a reference in an ordinance or a resolution that the water rates are going to fund these bond proceeds. A question that I ask is, should there be some way of saying that a percentage of these water rates are going to be for debt service? Or, I guess the question, because I know we can't tie it to Lewis and Clark because of what you've said, but how do we ensure that those funds are going to be used for retirement of the debt?
Do you want to come to the podium, Abby, please? Thank you.
It can't be in the resolution because the water revenues are the only things that can be, sales tax bonds can only pledge sales tax for them. And you can have another resolution if you wish to, separate from this resolution, saying that you pledge them, but that will not be something that you'll be giving information to potential bondholders. That's just an internal.
I understand that.
Yes.
But we're talking about item number 24, which is the ordinance that establishes the rate increase. And there's no reference to the bond or anything in that ordinance. My question is, should there be a provision in that ordinance for a percentage of the rate increase to fund debt service?
I think you'd be locking yourself into something that, as I understand it, the accounting and finance departments are planning to do it. It's a sales safe with the sales tax for back there in case you stop selling water. Nobody decides to buy because you've got a 10% increase. So you could have a dip, and so you could have to use sales tax. By putting yourself in a situation where you have to pay a certain percentage, you could be causing yourself some problems.
I understand that too, but there's also no one in this council is going to be here 10 years or 15 years now, and this is a 30-year bond issue. Sooner or later it's going to be lost that the rate increases in water rates were to fund Lewis and Clark.
Okay, this year there were 2 SRF bond issues that were sales tax bonds for water rates, for water projects also, and there was no provision in them that said that water revenues would pay for those bond issues either.
That's what's prompting this question.
I'm just explaining too, and it's essentially for the same reason. You cannot double pledge revenues for this bond issue under South Dakota law. You can do an internal memo saying that just like you're not using, you're trying not to go over 2 times or less than 2 times coverage. You could have that kind of thing. You can say it's kind of like a moral pledge, but a lockup on the revenues doesn't make sense on a legal basis. And you can't do it under South Dakota law. You can't pledge those revenues for the bond issue.
For the bond issue, but we could restrict it to debt service.
No, you cannot pledge, and that's essentially pledging it.
We're talking about 2 different things. I'm talking about the ordinance that establishes the rate increase, not the one for the bonding of Lewis and Clark.
It could be done. You could say that, a percentage of this rate increase will be, diverted to the sales tax fund.
Bob, we can work with you the next couple of weeks on that to get something done for you.
I think it needs to be addressed.
We'll work with you on that. Further questions? Not, is there a motion to set the hearing date for December 18th for items 24 and 25?
So moved. Second, Jameson.
Jameson, who seconded? Or Brown, did you move? Was it Lips, okay. Got a motion been made, seconded, to set the hearing date for items 24 and 25 for December 18th. No further discussion, all in favor of that motion? We'll vote yes, those opposed vote no.
Council members Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knudsen,
Yes.
Litz,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
All members present have voted.
This hearing date is set for December 18th, 2025.
5-minute break?
5-minute break.
Keep asking.
Again.
Keep asking.
Twenty-six. 26.
Are we in session right now?
We're back in.
Okay.
7:26.
26.
Deferred action, a resolution vacating West 22nd Street from South Ellis Road to 457 feet east, proposed South Wheatland Avenue.
I'd like to make a motion to re-defer that until December 18th.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Litz to defer until December 18th?
That's correct.
Okay. Motion to defer until December 18th, and that motion has been seconded. Further comments?
Just curiosity, what will 2 more weeks do? Are they close to an agreement?
I understood that he was still trying to work out some more details on it, so I'm not certain about that. It's just asked, and I didn't think it hurt.
Who asked the deferral?
Mr. Point.
Further questions of the motion to defer until December 18th for item number 26? I see no further questions. All in favor of the deferral will vote yes. Those opposed vote no.
Council members Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knudsen, Litz,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
All members present have voted. Item 26 has been deferred until December 18th. 7 yes, 1 excuse. Item 28. Item 27 is going to be at the last item, so we didn't skip it. Item 28.
A resolution amending the future land use map as a part of the Sioux Falls 2015 Growth Management Plan between Interstate 29 and North Marion Road, south of 60th Street North, from the existing allocation of single-family, multifamily, industrial/economic development, parks and open spaces, and commercial to proposed allocations of office/institutional and parks and open spaces.
This property is about 263 acres in size, located south of 60th Street, west of the interstate, and east of Marion Road. When the 2015 plan was approved, we had this shown as a mixed-use development area with industrial, residential, and some commercial. As you heard earlier today, this is now the proposed location for the new University Center. And with the concept that the Board of Regents have brought forth to us, the site will be basically divided into 2 sides. One will be research on the east side of Career Avenue, and on the west side will be institutional or academic. And so this land use amendment will provide for that designation, and will come forward in the future with a rezoning request and future subdivision plan. This is being recommended for approval.
Questions of Mike on item number 28, Bob?
Mike, there's a major drainage way through that property. Is there going to be provisions for some kind of a park or a recreational facility in that area?
Yes, we have in our 2015 plan a major recreational corridor that will extend from Skunk Creek all the way up to 60th Street, and this will be incorporated into that with open space and drainage and recreational amenities.
Very good, thank you.
Further questions, Kevin?
Yeah, just a comment, Mike. In our notes here, we have down the planning staff indicates that the South Dakota legislature has allocated funding to create a South Dakota Public University, and I think they're very accurate in their statement. So this really is the beginning of our 7th university in South Dakota. So
I won't comment on that one.
well, that's the planning staff said that. I'm just reading the planning staff.
Further questions of Mike? Others that wish to address the council on item number 28? Not as a council discussion or action on item 28.
Move to approve. Let's.
Next move is a second. Who seconded?
Brown.
Brown seconded. Okay. Motion made and seconded to approve item 28. I see no further discussion. All in favor of the motion to approve, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knudsen,
Yes.
Litz,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
All members present have voted. Item 28 has been approved. 7 yes, 1 excused. Item 29.
A resolution establishing the Sioux Falls City Council's priorities for the 2007 state legislative session.
Everybody's got a copy of that, I think. You want to let you
I can speak to it shortly, that everyone has a copy of those, and basically they're very generic, just that we support home rule. and we encourage the legislature to allow municipalities for taxation of liquor and alcohol or tobacco regulations.
Further questions? Others wish to address council on item number 29. Not council discussion or action on item 29?
Move for approval.
Kavanaugh, who seconded?
Second, Jameson.
Jameson seconded. Motion made, seconded to approve item 29. No further discussion on the
I
resolution.
just have one comment. I guess I have a problem with number 2, in regard to local control over taxation fees. Myself, I'm happy that the South Dakota legislature does not allow the city of Sioux Falls to raise the sales tax to 3, 4, or 5%. So in that particular regard, I'm glad that we have that restriction, and so I guess I'm going to vote against this resolution.
Okay. Any discussion about?
I got a comment. For years, we've always suspected that when people went to the legislature, they forgot where they came from. Each one of us, as a representative of this city government, represents more people than any single legislature is elected from. And I think we ought to keep that in mind, that we represent as large a body of represented people as any legislator in the state. And I think we take our job very seriously and don't need someone who's 150 miles from home telling us how to run our city.
Okay.
Well, I guess if I could comment.
One quick comment.
Yeah.
We've kind of settled down.
Having been in the state senate, I mean, I'm glad when we have these kind of restrictions on increasing taxes on the citizens of South Dakota, and more specifically on the citizens of Sioux Falls. So, you know, I'm happy when we have restrictions that at least lower the tax burden on the citizens of Sioux Falls.
Okay. With that, we've got the resolution before us. No further discussion. We have a motion made. Second, all in favor of that motion to approve? Vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
No.
That motion has passed 6 yes, 1 no, and 1 excused. Item 30.
A resolution establishing a salary program that maintains a market competitive salary range with a pay-for-performance program for the appointed position of city clerk commencing on January 1st, 2007.
Hi, I'm Angie Yuzi with City Human Resources. This is a resolution to establish the salary range and a pay-for-performance plan for the position of city clerk. We actually, in discovering that when we were doing all of our pay increases and our resolutions for pay with our union groups and management and so forth, the city clerk, their resolution did not mirror the executive order for our appointed officials. And as such, we've made a change to take into consideration a cost of living increase for the city clerk position. So I'll take
Questions
your
of Amy?
question.
Just for clarification, as it stands right now, how would a cost of living increase work, or is there any at all?
There is not a cost of living increase built into the city clerk's position.
Further questions? Others who address council on item number 30. Council discussion or action? Move to approve. Brown?
Second, Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh seconded. Further comments? Further comments? All in favor of the motion to approve? Vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Brown?
Yes.
Costello?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Knutson?
Yes.
Litz?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
All members present vote. Item 30 has been approved. 7 yes, 1 excused. Item 31.
A resolution establishing a salary program that maintains a market competitive salary range with a pay-for-performance program for the appointed positions of lead internal auditor and internal auditor commencing on January 1st, 2007.
Again, also in our review of our increases for our union groups and appointed and mid-management positions within the city, the lead internal auditor and internal auditor resolution did not include any provision for a cost of living increase for 2007. And as such, we've modified it to include that.
Questions of Amy on 31? Is there council discussion? Anybody else wish to address council item 31? Not, is council discussion or action on 31?
Move for approval, James.
Second, Costello.
Costello, seconded. Further comments? Seeing no further comments, all in favor of the motion for approval, yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Litz,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
All members present have voted. Item 31 has been approved, 7 yes, 1 excused. Item 27.
Deferred action preliminary subdivision plan 2006-09-11, Galleria at Rivers Bend addition to the city of Sioux Falls, Minnehaha County, South Dakota. Powder House Road and South Dakota Highway 42. The Planning Commission recommends approval.
This item was deferred from the last council meeting so that we could modify the development plan in conformance with the zoning that was approved and discussed at the last council meeting. And we've met the last week with the developers, with city staff. The developers have also been working with neighboring property owners to address any issues or concerns since the last time that we looked at this. And I believe tonight that all things have been resolved and that we're ready to proceed ahead. It's been a very long process, but I think it's going to be very rewarding for Sioux Falls in the end. We also had a chance as staff to meet with representatives of Robert Muir, who's working with Parappa-Sioux on future development of this commercial area. So the development plan that's being presented tonight that shows the street and lot layouts has been modified so that north boundary is now matching up with the fence line and that the proposed contours and berming are in conformance with the discussions that we've had previous to this. It meets all the city requirements, and staff is recommending approval of this. And we're just looking forward to the dirt starting to move next spring.
Questions on item 27?
Last meeting we dealt with this. I asked about the additional costs for the city regulations, and I was wondering if they happen to have those numbers.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Stagers, as much as I love your interest in knowing how much the city is going to charge you for improving the site with a path, we had already budgeted numbers for that. We wanted to deliver the city with a development that is going above and beyond what is traditionally required, so we already put in numbers for a bike path, for additional landscaping, ponding, and aesthetic amenity. I mean, the numbers are going to vary. Does that answer your question at all?
No. Because if you put those in your budget, then you have a rough idea.
I do have a rough idea of how much it's going to cost, but it's not city-imposed cost. It's developer-imposed cost. And that's why I don't feel comfortable giving you a dollar amount.
Kevin?
I think that's a key question. Were those elements in your plan because somebody told you you had to, or you wanted to?
We wanted to.
Thank you.
So if I could just clarify that a little bit. You're coming down from Minneapolis, building the Galleria, and you'd already decided to put a bike path in?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion about the plan that is being presented tonight, and I just would like to have a couple comments out of all sides so that we can feel comfortable that everybody is acceptable and understands what's going to happen and is comfortable with that.
Yes, I believe we're all prepared to do that. I just wanted to hop up and address Councilmember Stagers.
And since you're here, can you speak to that?
I can give it my best shot.
You are, in fact, happy with the agreement and, concur with all of what's laid out tonight?
Well, yes, we are. And I think all parties are mutually agreeable to it. It's taken a lot of work, and we had to take a pragmatic approach, but we are definitely on our side as a developer very comfortable moving forward with a plan set in place.
John, do you want to put your name and address just for the record here, please?
My name is Jonathan Lockhart. I'm a project manager with Parappa-Sioux Companies. We're based out of Minneapolis, 4999 Francis Avenue South, Suite 248, Minneapolis, Minnesota 55110.
We're with you.
Hey, I know you're happy with the agreement, and I know you're happy with spending this additional money and so forth. And having said all that, I wish you all the best, and I hope you make a lot of money off this project.
That's abated.
Kevin.
Just a second, we have it.
Jonathan, I don't know if you or someone else is best able to handle this, but from, was it 2 weeks ago or last week? What has been changed to bring all parties to the table? Just briefly.
Could I have Jim address that?
Members of the City Council, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to comment back earlier as to why we're doing it. Let me get that. 2 weeks ago, we introduced that we would be, this is a very large project, and we need a large construction company to go in and do this, and we've been interviewing, and we've had a number of very large national companies come to town to look at the site, and everything's very favorable. We chose on Robert Muir companies, and they've built award-winning lifestyle centers, nationally recognized. And so, in doing a bike path and all the green space, typically in a large lifestyle center, you'll see about 22% green space, that includes bike paths, trails, and so forth. Ours right now calls for close to 30%, and that's kind of what Robert Muir likes to deliver, a very highly amenitized site. Do we need to do that? Do we need all the water features? Do we need the statues? Do we need the fountains? No. But in order to really build a legacy, build something that's special for Sioux Falls and special for South Dakota, Robert Muir by far was the best choice. So yes, it's going to cost more. Do we know what that is? No, not exactly, but it certainly isn't cheap.
Jim, do you want to just give us your name and address?
Jim Lockhart, Director of the company, same address. And how this all came together and what has changed is basically, a lot of people have a lot of concerns because there's folks that are living and change is change, and without seeing it and knowing what's going to be there, you have somebody coming into town saying this is what we like to do, and people enjoy their lifestyle and where they're at and so forth, and so people have a lot of very legitimate concerns, and so we work very, very hard to address them to make sure, help them trust us that we're going to build something with quality and value. And so what was transpired over this past couple of weeks is just getting together with the Andersons and the Roddells and making sure that they were comfortable with what we were doing. We talked about berms, we talked about property lines and so forth, and we just came to an agreement on that, and we got that signed tonight. So I think that's why we got pushed back a little bit. So anyway, that's what's transpired. And we have representatives here that can come up and attest to what I just said. So.
Thanks, Jim. Others, questions? Others who wish, go ahead, Bob.
Well, I guess a question for Mike, probably. Mike, we had, I think, 3 or 4 items that were on the amendments to the original agreement as far as the width of that buffer on the north and so forth. Has there been anything deviated from that agreement that needs to be included?
No, this plan is in conformance with those changes.
Okay. I think that was really what Kevin was leading up to.
Others wish to address the council on item number 27.
Mayor and council members, my name is Matthew Bach. I'm with the Woods Fuller Law Firm in Sioux Falls. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Andersons and the Roddells, the property owners to the north. And I think Mr. Lockhart summed it up nicely when he said that this has been a continual process, and it's been a work in progress in a sense, in that they came in with a plan. The neighbors to the north, the Andersons and the Roddells, had some concerns. They showed a willingness to work with the neighbors, and this evening that work has come to fruition, and we have an agreement in place. The preliminary subdivision plan is in conformance with the zoning requirements, and we are satisfied that they're going to put together a nice development, and we're excited to see it grow.
Questions, Nathan? Thank you very much. Others wish to address council on item number 27. Yes.
Just a quick question.
Matthew?
Yes.
So now, were there any specific changes that that came about as a result of these negotiations with the berm or setbacks or anything like that, or was it just a better understanding of what the development entails?
I guess a brief history is in order. This really started back in April when Parapet first came to town and had spoken with some of the neighboring landowners. When this project was approved by the Planning Commission in October, some of these issues regarding the berm, the property line, and other issues were addressed at that point. In those minutes, it was stated that, Parapet was going to show a willingness to work with the neighbors. It has been in these past 2 months that work has taken place. We've come to an agreement, most recently 2 weeks ago, with regard to the property line, with regard to the berm size, and other issues that needed to be addressed. We needed that 2-week period, which is why we deferred the subdivision plan to, one, make sure our subdivision plan before this council conformed with the zoning ordinance that they proposed and was passed. It does that now, and also to work out, get a written agreement with memorializing a verbal agreement we had 2 weeks ago. We've been able to do that. We got it done tonight, and so yes, it has been a process where the berm height was an issue initially. Throughout these last 2 weeks, we've kind of got the fine details done. Nothing has been changed to the preliminary subdivision plan. Nothing has been changed with regard to the ordinance, but every other issue that our concerns were addressed by Parapet.
Thank you very much. Others wish to address the council on item number 27?
Mayor and City Council, my name is Tammy Ingram, and I live in Mystic Meadows, just north of the Parapet development site. I've been working with Jonathan Lockhart, and I received a letter concerning, as you recall, maybe the last meeting I was talking about the dust issues and possible contaminants on the arts wrecking. According to the letter that I received, Kim from the state has requested that the 8 RCRA metals and hydrocarbons, organic compounds, VOCs, petroleum, ethanol, benzene, xylene, petroleum, benzate, toluene, ethanol, benzene, all these things will be tested. At what point, I'm not sure if they're done at this point or not. I'm very happy about that. My concern primarily was if any of these, particularly lead, get airborne, with it being a living state, and I don't live that far away. Also, I was the person that spoke about my child having asthma and immune issues. So it's a great concern to me that my child has a quality of life during this process. I understood this letter was also, I should say, CC'd to Mike Cooper, and Mike Cooper has said, let's get, the dust to fly. That's what I'm afraid of. Dirt. What do you want? And if you want to go on to say possibly lead in the dirt, say that. Anyway. They did address, they said they understand my concerns, and they have some abatement issues that they said to minimize airborne dust, and the one that they agreed to was dust control watering, and then they went on to a lot of erosion control measures. Part of my concern is they have 190 acres, and how much will they expose? They didn't give me any idea of that at one time, or if they are going to use abatement issues as like planting rye, any other plantings to keep the dust down and soil from eroding as well. They said that they're not sure as to right now. I just spoke with them out in the hall that they don't have a final grading plan. However, they have hired Louisa Construction out of Flandreau, and they will be their grading contractor. My concern is I've heard now that it's been done in phases and it will take up to 5 years. So there'll be dust and dirt and things flying for 5 years. I don't want to have to be in a position to be calling all the time, and I would like to have a stipulation or something is put on the plan and building permit so that it's addressed at those times that they're taking care of the dust as well as the erosion, which there are laws for as far as the erosion and people to oversee that, but dust, there isn't anything that I'm aware of that would be enforceable other than attaching a stipulation to the plan and building permits. And that's what I've been advised.
Thank you. Questions? Thank you very much, Tammy. Others that wish to address the council on item number 27? Not. Is there council discussion or action on item 27?
Move for approval, Costello.
Costello moves. Is there a second?
Second, Litz.
Litz seconded. Further comments? I see no further comments. All in favor of the motion to approve? Vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Knutson,
Yes.
Litz,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
All members present have voted on item 27. Approved, 7 yes, 1 excuse. Is there a motion to adjourn? Move to adjourn. Kavanaugh, is there a second? Second, Jameson. Second. All in favor say yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Council members Brown,
Yes.
Costello,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Kavanaugh, Knutson,
Yes.
Litz,
Yes.
Staggers.
Yes.
We are adjourned.